The Exile, the great hall of the Galactic Council, was filled with voices, each different in sound and tone, some like deep rumbling rocks, others like sharp ringing metal. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in high seats around the circular chamber, their eyes fixed on the small group of humans standing in the center. The humans wore simple dark uniforms, no weapons, no armor, only the crust of earth sewn on their chests. They had been summoned to answer for what the Council called crimes against the peace of the galaxy. The air was tense, heavy with judgment, and the light from the grand ceiling shone down on them like a spotlight for the condemned. Admiral Marcus stood in front, tall and unshaken, his hands behind his back, his sharp eyes moving from one alien face to another. Beside him, Ambassador Alina kept her head high. Though her hands were clenched tight, the Council speaker, a tall creature with shimmering green skin and 6 eyes, slammed a long staff against the floor, the sound echoing through the chamber. The humans, the speaker announced, have proven themselves too aggressive, too unpredictable, and too dangerous to remain among the Council worlds. Murmurs filled the hall, some voices mocking, some filled with satisfaction. An insectoid leader clicked its mandibles and said, "You take what you want, you fight too easily, you do not understand balance." A scaled lizard-like delegate hissed, "You will destroy yourselves soon, better away from our space than within it." Alina stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "We have defended ourselves when attacked. We have built our colonies with our own hands. We have honored treaties more than some of you ever have." Her words were met with laughter from a few alien seats. Cold and dismissive, one heavy-set alien with tusks leaned forward and said in a deep voice, "Without the Council's trade, without our protection, your kind will fade into dust within a generation." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he did not speak. The speaker raised the staff again, silencing the hall. "The vote will now be taken," the speaker said, and the chamber walls lit with the colors of each species' decision. One by one, the lights flared red for exile, only a handful showing green for mercy. When the final light turned red, the speaker declared, "The humans are exiled from all Council territories." Effective immediately, a cold hush spread over the human delegation. Elena's eyes burned, but she stayed still. Marcus looked around the vast chamber, memorizing every alien face. Finally, he stepped forward, his boots echoing against the polished floor, and spoke in a low, steady voice. "You believe you are casting us into darkness, but you are only giving us the space to grow." His words carried no anger, only a quiet promise, and it made several alien leaders shift uncomfortably in their seats. The humans were escorted out under the watch of armed guards. They passed through long glass corridors that looked out onto the stars. Beyond the station, the Earthship Resolute floated in the blackness waiting for them. It was not the newest ship, nor the largest, but it was strong. Inside, the crew stood ready, silent, their eyes following Marcus as he stepped aboard. The docking clamps released with a deep, metallic thud. The ship drifted free, then its engines flared, pulling it away. From the Council station, from the bridge windows, the great spires of the station grew smaller and smaller. Some of the crew stared at it in bitterness, others in relief. Marcus kept his gaze forward, hands resting on the railing as stars began to streak past. "Where do we go now, sir?" asked Lieutenant Hayes, his young voice tense. Marcus did not answer at once. Instead, he looked around at his officers, men and women who had left families and homes behind. Finally, he spoke, his tone calm but filled with something harder than steel. "We go forward, always forward. Until there is no star left we have not touched." In the quiet that followed, the hum of the engine seemed louder. The crew exchanged glances, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. They were cut off from the vast network of worlds, from safe ports and friendly stations. Every planet they visited from now on would be their own risk, their own fight, but none of them spoke of fear. Far behind them, in the Council hall, alien leaders returned to their debates, already forgetting the humans. They did not see the look in Marcus's eyes as he gave the order to set course for the unexplored edges of the galaxy. They did not know that the exile they had celebrated would become their greatest mistake. In the shadows of space, humanity was free to build, free to fight, free to rise, and the galaxy, though it did not yet know it, had just released a storm. The first step into the unknown. The Resolute sailed through the darkness of space, its engines a steady hum that felt like a heartbeat. Inside, the crew moved with quiet purpose, repairing systems, checking supplies, and keeping their minds from the thought that they now belonged to no one but themselves. News of the exile had already reached Earth by secure channels, and the reaction was a mix of anger, fear, and something far more dangerous: determination. No one wanted to sit and wait for pity from the same aliens who had turned their backs. Instead, messages were sent to every corner of human space, calling for unity, calling for a plan on Earth. The leaders met in a secure chamber beneath the old capital. They were not just politicians, but scientists, engineers, and military commanders. Holographic images of distant colonies hovered in the air above the table, each one showing faces of men and women waiting for guidance. President Hale, her voice calm but firm, spoke to them all. The Council believes they have pushed us into a corner, but they have only given us the freedom to chart our own path. Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement. The first step was survival. Without access to Council trade, resources would run short, so humans would need to find new worlds rich with minerals, gas, and food. Old exploration ships, forgotten in dusty hangars, were pulled from storage and refitted. Civilian crews volunteered to go into deep space, knowing they might never come back. Every ship was given orders: map new systems, avoid hostile forces, and bring back anything that could be used to strengthen Earth. Meanwhile, Marcus and the Resolute were sent to the edge of known space, toward a cluster of stars marked on no official charts. The journey took weeks, and every day the crew saw fewer familiar signals on their scanners. Soon, the only company was the endless black, broken by distant suns and drifting rocks. In the mess hall, the crew spoke in hushed tones about what they might find. Some dreamed of friendly civilizations beyond the Council's reach. Others feared unknown dangers. One night, as the ship drifted near a dying star, their sensors caught a strange reading. Buried beneath the frozen surface of a dead moon was something metallic, massive, and ancient. Marcus ordered the ship into orbit, and a small team suited up for a landing. The surface was silent and still, the ground covered in frost that crunched under their boots. They followed the signal until they reached the mouth of a half-buried structure, black metal jutting out from the ice. Inside, their lights revealed walls carved with symbols no one could read. The air was cold and thin, but still breathable. They moved through vast halls until they found a chamber filled with strange machines, some broken, some still glowing faintly. At the center was a massive object, a weapon unlike anything human engineers had ever built. Its design was alien, but its power readings were still active after who knew how many centuries. The team carefully took scans, then sent the data back to the ship. The engineers on board whispered in awe as they studied the images. This weapon, if understood, could give humanity an edge no other power in the galaxy possessed. Marcus gave the order to secure as much as possible and leave no trace for anyone else to find. By the time they left the moon, the Resolute carried technology that could change the future. Back on Earth, the discovery was met with a mix of excitement and caution. Some feared using alien weapons would make humanity no better than the enemies who had exiled them. But the reality was simple. Without power, they would not survive in a galaxy that saw them as weak. Work began in secret labs, reverse engineering the technology. Ships were redesigned to carry weapons and shields that no Council fleet had ever faced. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy barely noticed. To them, the humans were scattered and struggling. They laughed at the idea that Earth could stand on its own. But in the shadows, The seeds of something far greater were being planted. New shipyards rose in orbit over Mars, the Moon, and the mining colonies. Every vessel built was faster, stronger, and more adaptable than before. The Resolute continued its journey. Charting unclaimed systems, they found planets rich and rare. Metals, asteroid fields full of resources, and gas giants whose storms could fuel entire fleets. Every find was carefully logged. Every location kept secret from alien eyes. The crew grew more skilled, more confident, and more loyal to Marcus. He never gave long speeches, but when he spoke, every word mattered. One evening, as the ship prepared to jump to a new sector, Marcus stood at the viewing window, watching a distant blue star shimmer. Lieutenant Hayes joined him, quietly asking, "Do you think we'll ever go back to the Council worlds?" Marcus did not answer at once. Finally, he said, "We will go back, but not to beg for a seat at their table. We will go back when they have no choice but to stand when we enter." The engines roared to life, and the Resolute vanished into the depths of space. Behind them, the path back to the Council grew longer. Ahead, the unknown waited, full of danger, full of promise, and full of the kind of freedom that only exile could give. Rise of the human fleet. Years passed since the day humanity was exiled. From the Galactic Council, what had once been a scattered network of colonies barely holding together had now transformed into something sharper, stronger, and more united than ever before. From the shipyards of Mars to the floating docks above, Titan, steel and titanium framed the skeletons of new warships in the cold vacuum. Thousands of engineers worked in silence, their welding torches sending bright sparks into the darkness. The hum of construction became the heartbeat of a rising power. The old Earth designs were only a starting point. Every new ship carried hybrid technology, human creativity fused with alien engineering, stolen, bought, or salvaged from the forgotten edges of space. Frigates were built for speed, cruisers for endurance, and carriers for launching swarms of fighters. Hidden beneath their hulls were weapon systems no alien power had ever seen before. Railguns that could punch through a capital ship's armor in one shot. Plasma lances that burned like a miniature sun, and shields that shifted frequencies to adapt to enemy fire. The Resolute, once just another warship, now served as the flagship of the first exploration and defense fleet. Marcus, now an admiral, commanded not one ship but dozens, each led by captains who had risen from the exile years. Training had changed too. Gone were the days of cautious maneuvers and defensive tactics. Now, human crews trained in asteroid fields and gravity storms, learning to fight where no Council fleet would dare to go. Every officer knew how to adapt mid-battle, turning chaos into opportunity beyond military power. Humanity had also mastered supply lines and logistics. Fuel refineries were hidden in asteroid belts, repair stations built into hollow moons, and communication relays spread across human space. Every new world they claimed was fortified. Every mining operation guarded by patrol fleets. They could now move an entire armada from one side of their territory to the other in days instead of weeks. The galaxy still saw them as the exiled species, but that image was growing more outdated with every ship launched into the void. Rumors began to spread among alien traders, stories of human fleets appearing without warning, striking against pirate kings who had terrorized space for centuries. Tales of colonies saved by strange, sleek ships bearing the banner of the United Human Armada. Some called them protectors, others called them opportunists, but all agreed on one thing. The humans were no longer weak. In one distant system, a band of slavers attacked a neutral mining colony. Expecting an easy victory, their ships surrounded the planet, cutting off all escape routes. But before they could land, human warships emerged from the shadow of the system's gas giant. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. Railgun rounds tore through slaver hulls, plasma fire melted their engines, and boarding teams moved with brutal precision. When the smoke cleared, the slavers were gone, and the miners stood on the surface staring up at the strange new ships that had saved them. Admiral Marcus heard about this incident while standing on the bridge of the Resolute. He did not smile or boast. Instead, he simply said, "This is what we will be known for, not just for what we destroy, but for what we protect." His officers nodded, though they also knew that protection was only part of the plan. The truth was that every rescued world became a loyal ally, every grateful colony a new base for the human armada. The Council worlds began to notice. Reports from their own traders spoke of human fleets that were better armed and faster than anything they had. Whispers of unmatched adaptability reached the ears of alien admirals. Some pushed to open talks with humanity, to bring them back into the fold before they became too strong. Others argued it was already too late. From the shadows, spies tried to learn the secrets of human technology, but few returned with anything more than stories of dead zones where scanners failed and ships vanished. Inside the council hall, the speaker who had once exiled humanity listened to these reports with growing unease. He remembered the defiance in Marcus's voice all those years ago. Back then, the humans had been small, scattered, and desperate. Now they were something else entirely, a storm spreading across the stars. But he told himself the Council still had the numbers, still had the greater fleets. What he did not understand was that numbers would mean little against a force that had been forged in exile. In the deep reaches of human space, the Resolute joined a massive fleet exercise. Hundreds of ships moved together, splitting into formations, then breaking apart in coordinated strikes. Fighters weaved between destroyers, carriers launched waves of drones, and battleships fired salvos in perfect rhythm. The drills were not just practice, they were a warning. Every captain knew that one day, the Council or another great power would test them. And when that day came, the humans would not be caught off guard. At the end of the exercise, Marcus stood on the bridge, watching the fleet drift back into formation. Beside him, Lieutenant Hayes said softly, "If the Council could see this, they'd call it war preparation." Marcus's answer was quiet. "Steady. Then they would be right." The young officer swallowed hard but said nothing more. The Admiral's eyes were fixed on the stars. For him, the rise of the human fleet was not the end of the journey. It was only the beginning, and far away, beyond the edge of the charts, lay the next step in humanity's march through the cosmos. A step that would shake the galaxy itself. First clash with the old powers. The galaxy had grown used to hearing whispers about the humans. They were a distant power now. A people who had carved out their own corner of space, far from the influence of the Galactic Council. But for some of the old powers, whispers were not enough. They wanted proof. They wanted to see if the stories were true or if humans were just dressing up old ships and spreading rumors. It began when the Varkan Empire, one of the oldest and proudest civilizations in the galaxy, decided to send a reminder of who truly ruled the stars. The Varkan warlord, High Marshal Zorath, commanded a battle group of 15 heavy cruisers and 30 escorts. Their orders were simple: find a human fleet on patrol, crush it, and leave the wreckage drifting as a warning to any who dared challenge the old powers. In the council hall, the speaker pretended not to know of this mission. But several members quietly hoped the Varkan would succeed. Admiral Marcus was aboard the Resolute when the first reports came in. A human mining station near the border had sent a distress signal. Unidentified ships were moving in fast. The mining crews were not soldiers. They had no weapons strong enough to fight a military fleet. Marcus wasted no time, ordering every ship in range to converge on the coordinates. Within hours, 20 human warships were racing through deep space, their drives burning bright against the black. The Resolute arrived first. Through the forward screens, Marcus saw the Varkan ships hanging above the mining station like predators over wounded prey. The Varkan hailed them at once, their leader's voice booming through the comms. "This is Varkan territory now, human. Surrender your outpost and your ships, or be destroyed." Marcus's voice was calm when he answered. "You are far from Varkan space, Marshal. Turn back and no blood needs to be spilled." The Varkan laughed, a low, cruel sound, and cut the channel. That was the last mistake they made. Marcus ordered the fleet to advance. Human destroyers darted ahead, weaving between asteroids and debris, drawing the Varkan's fire, hidden in the shadows of the belt. 3 human frigates powered up there. Railguns, their shots tore through the armor of 2 Varkan cruisers before the enemy even knew they were there. Explosions lit the darkness, and the first cries of alarm echoed in the Varkan coms. The battle unfolded like a dance of shadows and fire. Human ships moved unpredictably, breaking formation and striking from odd angles. The Varkan were used. To opponents who fought in straight lines, who followed the old rules of space combat. But the humans had no such rules. They had learned to fight pirates, scavengers, and monsters in places no one else dared to go. Every trap the Varkan set was turned back on them. A cluster of gravity mines intended for human frigates instead crippled 3 Varkan escorts when Marcus baited them into the field. Within 20 minutes, the battle shifted completely. The once proud Varkan formation was scattered, their heavy cruisers retreating behind clouds of debris. Marcus gave no order to pursue. Instead, he ordered his ships to hold position and target only weapon systems. He wanted the Varkan alive enough to crawl home and tell their story. When the last of the enemy jumped to hyperspace, the human fleet was still in perfect formation. Not a single ship lost. On the mining station below, the workers watched in awe. They had expected to be rescued, yes, but not like this. Not with such precision, such control. When the battle was over, Marcus opened a channel to the station commander. "Your people are safe. The Varkan won't return, not after what they've seen," he said, his voice steady, but inside, he knew this was only the first of many such encounters. Far away, in the Varkan capital, High Marshal Zorath stood in silence as he listened to the reports. He had underestimated the humans. His fleet, built on centuries of dominance, had been outmaneuvered by ships from a species the Council had once called primitive. He swore to return one day, but for now, he had no choice but to regroup. And the story of his defeat began to spread across the galaxy in the Council Hall. The speaker received the news with a cold expression. Officially, the Council remained neutral. Unofficially, they began to fear that the humans were becoming something even greater than the legend suggested. For the first time, there were quiet discussions about whether the exile had been a mistake. But it was already too late. Humanity's path had shifted forever, and they were no longer content with simply surviving. Back aboard the Resolute, Marcus stood at the viewing window. The stars stretched endlessly before him. Lieutenant Hayes joined him, speaking softly. "We've proven we can fight them." "Sir," Marcus nodded. "Yes, but soon they'll come in greater numbers." His gaze stayed fixed on the distant lights. He wasn't worried. He was waiting. The first clash with the old powers was over, but in the silence of space, every captain and crew member knew it was only the beginning. The turning point, the battle with the Varkan Empire, had changed everything. For the first time, alien powers realized that the humans were not just surviving in exile, they were winning. Rumors spread faster than ships could travel, telling of a fleet that fought like shadows and struck like lightning. In distant markets and hidden stations, alien captains began to whisper warnings to one another. Do not cross their borders. Do not touch their colonies. The humans are not what they used to be. But the galaxy was never peaceful for long. 2 great alien empires, the Zyrene Dominion and the Tolvuk Combine, were at war. Both were ancient, both were ruthless, and neither cared for the smaller powers caught in between. Their fleets clashed in massive battles that tore apart planets and left wreckage drifting through systems. Soon, their fighting spilled into human-claimed space. At first, the human armada tried to stay out of the conflict. Marcus ordered his fleets to patrol the borders, guarding only human worlds. But it was not enough. Refugees began arriving in damaged ships, begging for help. Merchants from alien worlds offered their loyalty in exchange for protection. Entire mining colonies sent messages to Earth. Take us under your banner, or we will be destroyed. Marcus and the United Human Council met in a secure station orbiting Mars. The discussion was long, voices rising and falling as each leader weighed the risk. President Hale finally spoke, her words calm but heavy. If we take them in, we will be declaring our presence to the galaxy, not as a scattered people, but as a power willing to expand. Marcus met her gaze and said, "Then maybe it's time." The orders went out within hours. Human fleets began moving into war zones. But they did not fight to help one side or the other. They fought for the systems they wanted to keep, strategic worlds with rare resources, key trade lanes, and safe harbors were secured one by one, sometimes by battle, sometimes by simple negotiation with desperate leaders who would rather join the humans than be destroyed by the old empires. One of the first victories came at the Red Veil Nebula. A small Tolvac fleet had cornered a civilian convoy inside the glowing clouds of ionized gas. Before they could finish the attack, human destroyers slipped in under sensor cover. Railgun fire lanced through the mist, ripping the Tolvac ships apart before they could react. When the last ship fell, the convoy was escorted not to their original homeworld, but to a human-controlled station. The refugees stepped onto the decks and saw the banner of the United Human Armada hanging in docking bay. They knew, in that moment, they would never go back. Each new world brought more ships, more crews, and more resources into the human fold. Engineers worked day and night to keep up with the growing demand for warships. Civilian yards began producing armed freighters to defend trade routes. Even colonies far from the front line started contributing, sending raw materials, food, and recruits. It was no longer just Earth fighting for survival. It was a growing alliance under human leadership. The Zerine and the Tolvac soon realized what was happening. They had been so focused on destroying each other that they had allowed a third power to rise between them. By the time they tried to push the humans out, it was too late. In one system after another, their fleets found human defenses too strong to break, and unlike the old empires, the humans could move faster, striking supply lines and command ships without warning. Inside the council hall, the speaker listened to the latest reports with unease. The humans had not only reclaimed their strength, they had expanded their influence beyond what they had ever held before. The exile, once seen as a punishment, had become the very thing that gave them freedom to grow without oversight. Some members whispered of inviting them back into the council. Others warned that the humans might return, but not as allies, on the Resolute. Marcus stood with his senior officers in the strategy room. Holographic maps of the galaxy glowed before them. Human territory, once a small corner of space, now stretched like a spider's web across key sectors. Lieutenant Hayes pointed to a cluster of systems on the border. "If we take these next, we'll control the entire corridor between the Zerine and Tolvac fronts." Marcus studied the map for a long moment, then said, "Take them." The turning point had come quietly, almost without notice. No grand declaration, no single battle that changed everything. Instead, it was the steady, relentless expansion of a people who refused to be forgotten. Every world they took, every life they saved, every ship they built, added to their growing legend. And now, the galaxy could no longer pretend that they were just the exiled. They were a force, and soon they would be more than that. In the silence of space, the Resolute turned toward the next target. Its engines flared, and the fleet followed. The humans had taken their first steps toward dominance, and there was no going back. Returned to the Council, the Galactic Council Hall had not changed since the day humanity was exiled. Its vast circular chamber still echoed with the voices of alien leaders. Its high pillars still rose toward a ceiling painted with the symbols of the oldest civilizations. But this time, the humans were not arriving as accused criminals walking under guard. They were coming as the most powerful fleet the galaxy had seen in centuries. It began with a shadow across the Council capital sky. One by one, enormous human warships broke through the clouds, their hulls reflecting the light of the twin Suns, the Resolute led the formation, followed by carriers, destroyers, and cruisers marked with the crest of the United Human Armada. Citizens of the capital world stopped in the streets, their voices falling silent as they stared upward. They had heard the stories, but seeing the fleet in person was something entirely different. Inside the council chamber, alarms had been raised the moment the fleet entered orbit. The speaker slammed his staff against the floor, calling for order. Humans do not enter here without summons, he declared, though his voice wavered just slightly. Moments later, the great doors opened. Admiral Marcus walked in with measured steps, his dark uniform crisp, the silver insignia of his rank glinting under the lights. Behind him came Ambassador Elena and several other officers, their faces calm and unreadable. The room felt smaller now. Every alien leader's gaze followed Marcus as he stepped to the center of the chamber. The speaker finally spoke. "You arrive here without invitation, yet you expect us to welcome you?" Marcus did not raise his voice, yet his words carried across the hall. "You exiled us, you left us to fade. Instead, we built something greater than any of you imagined." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others glared with thinly veiled hostility. The representative of the Varkan Empire spoke up, his deep voice hard. "And what do you want now, Admiral? Revenge?" Marcus's reply was simple. "I want nothing from you, except to warn you." He stepped forward, activating a small device in his hand. A hologram flared to life above the floor, showing a monstrous silhouette, jagged and vast, moving through deep space. "This," Marcus said, "is the fleet of the Herod, an enemy from beyond our borders. They do not conquer, they consume." He let the image rotate slowly, showing alien ships torn apart, worlds left as burned husks. "They have already destroyed 3 systems at the edge of Tovak space, and they are moving this way." The council erupted in noise. Some leaders shouted for more information. Others accused Marcus of lying. The speaker struck the floor with his staff, demanding silence. Marcus waited for the noise to fade, then continued. "You are not ready for them. Your fleets are slow, your tactics outdated, and your alliances fragile. We can stop them, but only if we choose to." His words hung in the air like a blade. The council knew the humans could leave right now and fight the Herod alone, but if they did, they might also claim whatever worlds they saved. The Tovak delegate, looking uneasy, spoke at last. "And if we ask for your help, what would it cost us?" Marcus's answer was as calm as it was cold. Respect, recognition, and the understanding that the age of underestimating humanity is over. A long silence followed. The speaker studied Marcus, his 6 eyes narrowing, when he finally spoke. His voice had lost its earlier edge. "Then the council will request your aid." Marcus inclined his head slightly. "We will stand against the Herod, but this will be on our terms." Outside, in the skies above the council capital, the human fleet remained in silent formation. Crowds filled the plazas and walkways, watching the massive warships glitter in the sun. Whispers ran through the streets. The humans had returned, and they were stronger than anyone had believed possible. Back in the chamber, the agreements were sealed. For the first time since the exile, humanity and the council stood on the same side of a coming war. But it was clear to everyone present that this was not a reunion of equals. It was an alliance born out of necessity, with one side holding all the power. As the meeting ended, Marcus turned to leave. He paused at the door, glancing back at the chamber where years ago he had stood in disgrace. This time, there was no mockery, no laughter, only silence and the weight of unspoken respect. When he stepped outside into the bright light, the roar of the crowd below rose like thunder. From orbit, the Resolute's captain awaited the signal to depart. When Marcus's voice came through the com, it was steady and sharp. "Set course for the Herod front. We have work to do." The return to the council was complete. But humanity had not come back to ask for permission. They had come back to lead. Conquerors of the cosmos, the Herod came like a storm from the edge of the galaxy. Their ships were unlike anything seen before, black shapes that seemed to drink in the light, bristling with spines and weapons that glowed with an unnatural fire. They did not send warnings, they did not speak. They simply tore through systems and left them lifeless. Whole planets vanished into silence. Their cities turned to ash and their oceans boiled away, but they had never faced the united human armada. In the first days of the war, the human fleet moved faster than the Herald expected. Scouts slipped ahead, finding weak points in their formations. Strike groups appeared from hyperspace without warning, cutting apart Herald ships before they could adapt. For the first time, the Herald's endless advance slowed. Admiral Marcus led from the Resolute, his voice steady over the fleet channels. "Hit them hard, move before they can track you. Don't give them a second to breathe." His captains followed without hesitation. Human destroyers darted through the shadows of asteroid belts, unleashing railgun volleys. Carriers launched swarms of fighters armed with new plasma-tipped missiles, each one striking like a spear of fire. The Council fleets fought alongside them, but it was clear who carried the war. While Council admirals hesitated, humans struck and moved on. While others defended, humans advanced. In battle after battle, the Herald fell back, leaving wreckage in their wake. For the first time in centuries, the old powers looked to humanity not as outcasts, but as their only hope. One of the greatest victories came at the Dusk Rift, a deep chasm in space where gravity tore at anything that came too close. The Herald fleet entered, thinking no one would dare follow, but Marcus had studied the rift for years, using gravitic currents. The human fleet danced between deadly pulls, striking the Herald from impossible angles. When the battle ended, not a single enemy ship escaped. Every victory brought more worlds into human hands. Refugee planets swore loyalty to the United Human Armada in exchange for protection. Strategic systems became fortified bastions, armed with railgun platforms and shield generators powered by alien tech reactors. Human engineers even rebuilt captured Herald ships, turning their own weapons against them. The galaxy watched as the humans grew not just in strength, but in reach. The Herald, once unstoppable, were driven back to the edge of known space. There, in the black void beyond the Veil Nebula, the final battle began. The united human armada formed a wall of steel and fire across the enemy's path. The Herald surged forward, desperate to break through, but this time, there was nowhere for them to run. The fighting lasted for days. Missiles lit the dark like falling stars, railgun shells ripped through hulls, and plasma beams cut glowing scars across the void. The Resolute charged at the center of the Herald flagship formation, its shields flaring under the enemy's fire. Marcus gave the final order without hesitation. "All ships, full assault. End it now." When the last Herald vessel exploded in a burst of white light, the war was over. Silence settled across the fleet channels, followed by cheers that echoed through every ship. The galaxy was safe, but more than that, it was changed forever. Every species knew who had truly won the war. And it was not the Galactic Council. In the weeks that followed, delegations from across the stars came to human space. They offered treaties, trade, and alliances. Former enemies bowed their heads in respect. The Speaker of the Council visited Earth for the first time in history, standing before Marcus and saying words no one thought would be spoken. "Without you, we would all be gone." But Marcus knew this was only the beginning. With the Herald defeated, the united human armada now controlled key sectors, vital trade routes, and the loyalty of dozens of worlds. The galaxy was no longer ruled by the old powers. It was shaped by humanity. And humanity had no intention of stepping back into the shadows. On the bridge of the Resolute, Marcus looked out at the stars. Lieutenant Hayes stood beside him, his voice filled with quiet awe. "We've done it, sir. We've conquered the galaxy." Marcus shook his head slightly, a small smile at the corner of his lips. "No, Hayes, we've only opened the first door. There's an entire universe out there." The fleet began to move, their engines burning bright. They were no longer the Exiled, No longer the forgotten, they were the conquerors of the cosmos, and the stars themselves seemed to bow before them.